The sponsor of this episode is Chadwell Supply, an OG in the multifamily industry. Chadwell Supply is the largest privately owned maintenance and repair supplier, and they deliver orders the next day from local warehouses across the United States. To find out how Chadwell Supply will make your day better, visit www.chadwellsupply.com/difference.
Thank you for joining us today on PX Multifamily, the People Experience podcast for multifamily. And I'm so excited. I have Tina Baker with me today, and we are going to talk about the aftermath of Hurricane Helene and the heroics of the people in our industry. In particular, I want to talk about the collaboration, the kindnesses, the caring. She is on the board of the Apartment Association of Western North Carolina, and if you'll stick to the very end, you'll hear so much more about Tina and her journey in this industry. But in the meantime, I think she and I want to tell you some of the heroic stories. Tina, thank you for joining me today. You've been on the pulse of what everybody's facing in Western North Carolina and Asheville, those western towns. And I wanted to ask, what's impressed you the most in terms of the industry response?
Thank you so much for having me, Mary. I really appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be on the PX Multifamily podcast today. And I have been, I would say, tearing up and shedding tears just about every day since this hurricane hit our area, with the stories that I've been hearing and the amazing way the industry has responded. They, from top ownership on down to on-site, has been nothing but miraculous, really. The people that have come together to take care of one another has been remarkable. And one of the most important things that I've seen is that boundaries have been erased. There are no boundaries from the top to the on-site. Everybody is on equal playing field. They're all there to support each other, to help each other in any way possible. And the boundaries have been erased between competitors. We're a very competitive industry, as we talked about earlier. And it's, our market survey is called a rent comparable report, and I almost sometimes abbreviate it COMP, thinking it's competition. It's who my competition is around me. But that's been erased. People are helping other sites with displaced residents, helping them with lower rents, waiving fees. It's been amazing. We had a Google spreadsheet actually in Western North Carolina going around of who had availability and who can place who where. And they got residents placed, very quickly. It was amazing to see the camaraderie and they've just been so kind to one another, nice, loving, supportive. Every positive adjective you could think of, you've seen it in action.
Absolutely. And it's really compelling because people have been without power for several weeks, which you kind of can adjust to a little bit better, but they've also been without water. I think I heard most people got water earlier than expected. They got it this week, which is still several weeks in. Is that what you're hearing as well?
Well, most of the folks that are in the immediate Asheville area have received water, or your far western towns that actually are able to open, Cashiers and the Highlands and places like that. But folks that are north of Weaverville and then northwest up toward Boone and that area, they still are without water. So they're going to be the ones that, especially in the most rural areas, north of Black Mountain, they're the ones that everybody is saying, we're hoping to get you water by the end of the month. That's the goal.
Wow. And in this journey, you are so connected with so many people in Western North Carolina. Tell me some of the impactful stories, the ones that have been most topmost of your mind.
So I'm going to try to do this without crying, because
it's a safe space, Tina. You're safe.
When I think about, and I've been working with these folks for a couple of years now, and I've gotten to know them, and to see what they've done in the face of adversity. And it's almost just been automatic. Like they just didn't even think about it. And that when you think of the word hero, that's what you think about. It's just, I don't think about myself. I put everything else aside. I just do what needs to be done. And it's the highest like level of initiative ever, which I think is one of the most amazing attributes that you can have is the ability to take initiative and get things done without being asked. And I would say probably one of my top stories is during the storm. So this would have been Friday into Saturday. A tree fell on an apartment building and it took out the stairs. And this particular building, apartment community is very old and kind of historic in the Asheville area. And it's an amazing community. And there was an elderly lady on oxygen that couldn't get out of her apartment. She was unable to leave, and they all needed to go. They were being asked to evacuate. And the manager climbed a tree, went to get this elderly woman and her oxygen tank, somehow got her and the resident down the tree to safety, because by that time 911 was disabled. It wasn't, telephone lines were gone, internet was gone, and police and fire were having a hard time getting to people because they didn't know who was in distress. And so this manager took it upon herself to go get that resident. And it's just, I'm like, if I was in that situation, I would hope that I would have done the same thing. And she drove her to one of the shelter sites so they could get her plugged into her oxygen and so she can carry on with her life.
That is amazing story.
It's amazing.
What some people probably don't realize, and you would because of where you live, and I happened to be at a property in Spartanburg, which was hit. We were getting texts saying 911 was down. And I mean, how does that even happen? Right. And so that's something hard for those who don't live in Western North Carolina probably to fathom of, well, you can always call 911. Well, no, you can't. Yeah. So that's an amazing story. And I know you have others. Please tell us.
During the storm as well, and this was an apartment community in East Asheville, right on the Swannanoa River, which, if you've been paying attention, that's one of the hardest hit areas of the Asheville direct area. And there's a creek behind them, a creek that became a raging river. And a maintenance technician lives on site, and he had the foresight to see the water rising. And in 30 minutes, he emptied 6 buildings of residents that in 30 minutes were flooded to the 2nd floor and now deemed inhabitable and have to be torn down. He knocked on every door, and it was just an amazing, just for him to even think about that. to see the water rising and see what was happening, and to be able to save all of those lives. I mean, they would have lost residents. I was speaking with the owner the other night about it, and they would have lost residents. And he saved lives. I mean, it's just remarkable. And then on the flip side, on the aftermath and the trying to get just through day to day with no power, no water, management company had brought in a tank of water, and this maintenance team had the most creative idea to take their car wash and make it into showers for the residents.
Oh,
Insane.
insane, but wonderful.
Right? Just amazing to me. The creativity and the just the knowledge to have to even do that is pretty remarkable to me.
That is
also
remarkable.
There's a senior community who's a 55 plus community that just opened near the Rutherfordton area. So that side of the Asheville and Henderson County area. And any senior citizen or person over the age of 55 that completely lost their home, they have brand new apartments that they have given the discount of 50%, waiving all the deposits and all the fees, and any short-term lease that they needed or long-term, whatever they needed, which was remarkable because we've heard stories that actually happened to that some, elderly folks, senior citizens or seniors, however you want to label it, after 55 did lose their homes. And so they were able to provide amazing refuge for a very nice discounted rent.
That's
and
amazing.
This community is gorgeous. And there's a chef that's there every day. And so they also opened up to the community. It was Friday, October the 3rd. They had a free lunch for anybody who could get to their community. They just fed everyone that day. It was completely free. And it was really, really a nice gesture to try to help people quickly.
Tina, you hear in other kinds of tragic situations, you hear about people taking advantage of others, but what you hear from our multifamily family
Yes.
is that they're opening doors, feeding people, and doing the opposite. Oh, that's a wonderful story, Tina, and I know you have more. Keep going.
There is a regional manager that lives in Greenville, South Carolina, that has properties in the Asheville area, and she had filled her truck full of pizza. There must have been 200 pizzas in that truck, and she drove to her properties and fed the communities. It was just, I saw her post and I just burst out crying. I was like, that's amazing. And, that was still early when roads were not clear. It was not safe to travel, but she did it anyway because she just loves her teams and her communities and just wanted to show them that they were there, that they cared, and, they were present. And that just really, all this is just amazing.
It really is, Tina. And you think again, this is food was a thing, and supplies and all that. So, wow, I know.
It was. And just, there are so many stories of just the on-site teams, and they're going through, they don't have water where they live. They don't have power. They may have trees on their homes, cars, things destroyed, but they still have the responsibility to take care of their team, their community. It's a lot. And just the fact that they have gone way above and beyond is just blown my mind. And they're all rock stars and heroes. They just are. One community opened up their clubhouse, and the residents could come there and gather, play games, This is no water, no power. They had supplies. They had bottles of water and food that the management company had sent in, brought in. And it was just kind of a refuge, if you will, to come together and not feel like you're alone going through all of this. And they just had some wonderful Instagram photos and some really cool stories from their residents on how they've gotten through this difficult time, and thanks to their on-site team. And I just think that's awesome. Just anything that they've done has been remarkable.
Amazing.
It's just the support has been wonderful to see between different communities and companies and the associations. And the associations have been cool to me that they're taking the administrative side and saying, we know you don't have time to do this research. You don't have internet possibly or telephone, but we're going to do this research and we're going to provide these resources to you. And that's just been really, really helpful. And I know that the management companies and on-site teams have really appreciated that.
Well, and Tina, you're kind of downplaying your role. You serve on the board of the Apartment Association of Western North Carolina, as well as the Upper State Apartment Association. Brian, the executive director, did say what a wonderful resource you'd been. So don't downplay. I know we said we'd talk about you later, but I think you've participated on industry calls and emergency things to try to help from an offsite position as well. And we just want to thank you for that, because that's heroic. Everybody can't be literal boots on the ground. And you and I both were talking that we felt, I think you called it survivor guilt a little bit, because you want to be there helping, and you say by the grace of God, is the only way we're not experiencing some of those things. So I thank you for your role. And I don't know if you have more immediate stories you want to share today.
There was just one more.
Wonderful.
There's an incredible couple that work for different companies, and they're up in the Burnsville area that just was definitely just devastated with mudslides and just everything. It's just, you can't even tell. It just doesn't look the same. It's kind of like the Chimney Rock, Lake Lore area. It's just devastated. And just how not only themselves, but their team and just everybody around them getting together and doing what needs to be done to try to clear, just clearing roads. And that's a huge physical task. There's just picking up trash, trying to help neighbors to dig out, from all of the muck and the mud and the rocks, a lot of rocks. And just the stories that they've been telling about coming together and people helping just in that small area that's been so devastated. And thankfully they did get internet about a week ago or so, and they were able to start posting and start, getting more supplies and things in that very remote rural area.
Yes.
And how that social media has been used. We think about, I'm kind of old school still sometimes, and I miss the old days, if you will. But there are times like these that I'm so thankful that we have a way to communicate quickly in times of trouble, when we can get internet and things like that, when we do have it. And social media has been an amazing way for people to get help, to get support, to get supplies. And I really I'm glad that they're using it.
That's wonderful. You've told so many great stories, and I know you'll have others, because I think what I want people to hear is we're not done. You and I were talking about who knew mud would be a thing. And I heard on an industry call, because I'm not in that area, that there are cajillions of tons of mud and no way to remove it at this particular moment. And so, but not even just that, it's the rebuilding. And you
Yeah.
and I both agree that our industry is responsive and resilient, and is working hard in the recovery for this area. But it's not an overnight thing. Can you tell me a little bit what you think of the future going forward, or how we can help, or what you suggest? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
So one of the things that came about was Firewatch, and that was huge. I didn't even think about that, but of course, whenever your systems are down, that's what we were told we had to do. If there was, even if your sprinkler system, your fire system had gone off, until it was restored, you had to have Firewatch. And so that's been a big thought that, we really didn't think about. So just to be able to help communities with the suppliers that we have, with the staffing companies, and to be able to provide that support to provide Firewatch has been a really big weight off. I know a lot of maintenance supervisors' shoulders, and management companies and owners as well. And you mentioned the mud, just the fact that there are codes that are, usually enforced, and to have to wait for certain criteria to be met to be able to get the mud gone is just a big weight. And so the resources that we can provide as far as the association or management companies to help our on-site teams to be able to deal with those things. And sometimes we have to be patient, and that's not easy when you want to get back to business as usual.
And
But we
if I
know,
can
as you said, it's going to take some time.
if I can clarify, so the mud, the issue is that you have to be able to somehow prove it's not contaminated, which,
Yeah.
it is dirt.
Right.
It's dirty
Right.
just by nature.
Yeah.
And but I know that's an issue that is looming, that you guys in the Apartment Association of Western North Carolina are working hard to fetter through and help with government code. And then the whole Firewatch thing, if I can clarify that a little bit for those who maybe don't realize what an issue that is. It's
Yeah.
having to prove 24/7 that, or not prove, but to watch and make sure 24/7 that no fire has broken out, and
Correct.
being able to staff that when, that's a thing.
Yeah,
And
it
so I
is.
love your story of how people have I heard from somebody that even some residents had volunteered to be part of this 24/7 fire watch, because weeks in, how can
Yeah,
people, how can a small staff sustain that? But
that's
a
true.
lot of people have done it with heroic being there when they're exhausted too.
That's very true. That's a great point. Oh,
Yeah. So I hope that you'll agree to meet with us again and give us some follow-up and tell us how things are going, because again, it's not going to be fixed overnight. That area really has experienced a lot of devastation.
mm.
But it's people like you, and I want to talk about you now. Thanks for sticking on, because now you get to hear a story about a multifamily hero, which Tina Baker's been in the industry for a skinny minute. You and me both. I bet we're about the same tenure. And so tell us a little bit about your multifamily adventure. Tell how you got in and what you do and all that you want us to know about you.
Well, thank you, Mary. I have been in the industry since about 2004. It's a second career for me. And
Ah,
I moved into an apartment community, and I needed a job, as we find a lot of, I'm going to say, some of our best employees. And I had gotten to know the property manager, and we just became kind of friendly, and she needed a part-time leasing consultant at the time. And I needed a job. And so I said, well, tell me about this industry, because I really don't know anything about it except being a resident in an apartment. And she did, and it sounded like it was right up my alley. I had ministry experience before. I was in the church ministry arena. And I thought, helping people with one of the two most basic needs that we have as human beings is shelter, that sounded like something that I could definitely get into. And so I loved it. And I was also a bank teller at a local bank as a part-timer. And I decided whoever hired me full-time got me first. And thankfully, the apartment industry did, because that's really where my heart was. And from a part-time leasing consultant, 6 months later, I was promoted to assistant manager and had to travel 45 minutes into another state to do this job. And it was a over 500 unit property, and I was just loving it. Everything was great. But there was a brand new property being built in this town. It was Augusta, Georgia. Oh. And they had not had a brand new apartment community in 9 years at the time. And I was like, that sounds like a lot of fun. So I started talking to my marketing director. What's a lease up like? And she was like, oh, it's great. Not knowing that I'm going to apply and she's going to lose me. But after her enthusiasm, I was like, that's something I want to do. I want to fill up an empty buildings with people. And so I moved over from Mid-America to Lincoln Property Company and managed a lease up and was there for 4 years. It was just a lot of fun. I loved it, learned a lot. We had, as we call in the industry, the three whammies are fire, flood, and blood. And I learned all three, as a manager, and got my feet definitely planted very strongly. That private owner decided to sell that property, and it was the only property Lincoln had in the area. And I really wanted to stay loyal to a company. I didn't want to start jumping around. So I moved to Atlanta, and I was there for 11 years and had the pleasure of renovating 2 properties with an owner, an institutional owner, and in the Dunwoody, Sandy Springs area, and then Buckhead. And just really thoroughly enjoyed that. Tons of experience. And I love listening to the stories of other managers and on-site staff when I go to visit them, which you'll hear why I visit them in a minute, because I understand where they're coming from. And I'm happy to lend a hug or advice if they ask for it. But my mother had taken ill, and so I needed to move back to South Carolina. This would have been in 2021. And so I transferred with a different company. Lincoln didn't have anything at the time, but I needed to get closer to her. Driving from Atlanta to Aiken, South Carolina was getting real old real fast. So I was able to get to Greenville. So that was wonderful. It was at least 2 hours away. It was as close as I could get. But I was managing a property that had retail, and so I got to experience that as well in a mid-rise, which was fun. But then my mother had passed, and I don't know. It was just like God knew it was time for a change. And I was friends with the apartments.com regional director. We worked together with Lincoln Property Company a long time ago. And she was coming to town to have lunch and invited me to lunch. And so we started talking, and long story short, I was able to fill a void that she had on her team for the Spartanburg and Asheville region. And so I joined apartments.com with the CoStar Group in October of 2022. So I'm coming up on my 2-year anniversary Saturday, tomorrow.
Yay! Congratulations!
So, thanks. And it's just been a joy to be able to get to know all the on-site teams and to be able to be a support for them on another level. And I cherish them. And especially in adversity, it's already a difficult job. And it's getting more difficult by the year, it seems.
Yes.
Just with so many different conflicts. And it's just harder and more difficult, especially with the economy. And they're just amazing. They're all amazing. And I'm just so thankful that I get to share with them on this side of their journey. So I really, really thankful for my job.
What a beautiful story. And like so many of us, you entered the industry quite by accident. Just
True.
Just as I did. But what could be more satisfying than providing home for people? Because it is home. It's not housing. It's providing home. And
That's right.
That's what it sounds so, circling back around to the stories you told, that's people really caring about taking care of people in their homes and making life better. So
it's so true.
Thank you for that. Thank you for being a guest on PX Multifamily. And will you promise me you'll circle back around with me in a few weeks so we can tell more stories of how our multifamily family, our industry, is responding so positively to helping people who have suffered through this Hurricane Helene aftermath.
I sure will. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you.
Thank you again to Chadwell Supply for sponsoring this episode. Chadwell Supply delivers unforgettable service with next day delivery, online and in-person maintenance training, procurement platform, assistance to make your ordering simple. Visit chadwellsupply.com/difference to learn how Chadwell Supply will make your day better.